Well, thank you so much, Dirk, and it's really an honor to give this on behalf of all the investigators for the ILLUMENATE study, from my co-national PI, Dr. Sean Lydon, to all the investigators, as well as I'm presenting some of the European data for Dr. Zeller and Dr. Schroeder and all the other PIs in Europe. So this is just basically an evidence review of the StellarX data that's available. These are my current disclosures. So what are the technology highlights? I think as we go forward in this era of DCB, I think Juan Granado said it beautifully about 10 years ago. I mean, we need the drug, and I think we've decided that with drug-coated balloons, paclitaxel is that drug, but we also need a coating technology. But what's important is, I think, you know, when he said this 10 years ago, limiting the drug use, limiting the drug loss, keeping the transfer efficiency high, and obviously having great efficacy and safety is the goals of any DCB program. So if you look at the StellarX technology, and you're going to see the other two presented very shortly, you can see the StellarX has an EnduraCore technology. And this, of course, uses paclitaxel at a dose of 2 micrograms per millimeter squared. But it also has a hybrid coating of the polyethylene glycol excipient. So the hybrid coating is a mixture of crystalline paclitaxel with amorphous paclitaxel, which differs from the other two. And however, so what this does is it gives you sustained drug release and prompt bioavailability and improving stability of the coating. So the polyethylene glycol excipient also differs from the other two. And here it has a high molecular weight and a high affinity to hydroxylapatite, which may be, make it efficacious or maybe a little bit more efficacious than calcium. Remains to be seen because different definitions are there. And the other thing is that what this polyethylene glycol excipient does is it makes it highly adaptable to balloon deformation, elongation, and also allows the drug with slow dissolution of the drug while you track the balloon all the way to the lesion. And so when you combine this EnduraCore technology, which includes the paclitaxel, the coating, and the polyethylene glycol, what you end up with is high coating durability and high drug transfer efficiency, which was the goal that Juan had talked about 10 years ago. So what's the clinical evidence? So if you look at the SFA program, it's a very robust program. You have the ILLUMENATE First in Human, the ILLUMENATE European RCT, which was recently published in circulation, the ILLUMENATE Pivotal, which has actually been submitted, ILLUMENATE Global, and currently enrolling is the ISR cohort, and the ILLUMENATE PK, which is the pharmacokinetic study. So I think if you look at it, the one thing you could say about this program, it is very robust. You have angiographic and duplex core lag, the clinical events committee, and external monitoring, as well as multi-center, and 2 of the 3 or 4 trials are randomized. So you're going to be able to get some hard evidence for you to base your practice on. But what's really proven so far, and I think it's very heartening for all of us who are very fond of DCBs because it's changing our practice, is that all DCBs are safe. I think we can all say that together, that DCBs are safe. If you look at the ILLUMENATE particularly, the all-cause mortality was very low, as was the major target limb amputation, as well as the clinical-driven TLR. So again, it's a safe DCB. And if you start breaking down the trials, obviously the first in human was a pilot study, sort of a proof of concept. Obviously, great data out to 2 years, although it wasn't randomized. 89% primary patency at 1 year, I believe 80.9 at 2 years. So clearly it did work. But the more important trials are the ILLUMENATE European randomized control trial and the US Pivotal. So because this is 2 randomized trials that has 628 patients, for us, which we can learn quite a bit from. If you look at ILLUMENATE EU-RCT, you had a good preponderance of diabetics, renal insufficiency, prior coronary revascularization, mostly Rutherford 3 patients, but also you had a good smattering of CTOs and calcium, and you had a fantastic primary patency of 89% at 12 months as compared to 65% in the PTA arm by Kaplan-Meier estimates. If you look at the ILLUMENATE US Pivotal, you had a little bit of a different trial, and possibly this is because of the other 2 DCBs being available here or enrollment. We really can't explain it, but you did have a higher preponderance of females, diabetics, renal insufficiency, and patients with BMI. The second thing is calcium. There was a higher preponderance of core lab defined calcium, and I want to stress that because there are different core labs used in all different trials. So the definition used in the ILLUMENATE trial, by that definition, the core lab defined calcium was higher at 43.9% and 43% in the PTA arm, and also a higher preponderance of low vessel runoff. But again, what's heartening to all of us as proponents of DCB is that you have a fantastic primary patency as compared to PTA of 82.3 at 12 months versus 70.9% at 12 months by Kaplan-Meier estimates. Again, if you look at it in context between the two trials, and you can see two different types of patient cohorts and clinical characteristics that were enrolled. EURCT versus Pivotal. Pivotal had a more severe calcium as defined by the core lab, higher preponderance of renal insufficiency, diabetics, females, and BMI, as well as less runoff vessels. And yet you can see a consistent performance of the Stellarex balloon with a 1-year primary patency or reduction in TLR rates here from 89.0% in the US Pivotal versus 94.8. So why is this calcium message resonating? And we're going to talk about this in the next case. Is that Finelli's elegant demonstration now many years ago, he demonstrated that circumferential calcium, regardless of length, really has a adverse outcomes on DCB. Whether it's because of increased late lumen loss or poor drug uptake, we really don't know. But if when you start to look at the evidence in context, you know that you have a lot of evidence in DCBs. The IMPACT SFA are 300 plus patients, Levant 400, almost 500 patients, and the Illuminate series about 600 patients. But what you're able to find is, if you look at the patient characteristics, you're also able to study different patient characteristics and put it in context of that particular trial. So if you look at the females, diabetics, renal insufficiency, lesion length, and severe calcium, you have a different smattering across the trials. So you can start to postulate that maybe DCBs do work in all the different trials, and especially the Stellarex DCB, especially in the US Pivotal, seem to have a higher preponderance of these characteristics of diabetes, females, and obviously calcium. So if you see the evidence, you could see all DCBs work at 1 year. You could see that the IMPACT SFA obviously had this, but if you look at the Illuminate series, you could see that the European EURCT trial showed a patency of 89%, and the Illuminate US Pivotal added at 82.3%, with, again, like I said, a higher preponderance of these lesion characteristics of these patients, as well as patient characteristics. And again, the clinically readable TLR, again, is impressive in all those trials, but remains impressive in the Stellarex database. So what about real-world results? Illuminate Global is ongoing. Actually, it's now been published, or presented by Dr. Zeller in Link in 2017. You can see here that it had an 81% reduction in our primary patency in patients with real-world lesions. You can see the lesion length in these were about 7.5 centimeters, but again, there were a higher preponderance of CTOs, and again, a similar preponderance of calcium as defined by that core lab, but again, working in these real-world lesions. And also, you can look forward to the SAVOR registry, which is really an all-comers type trial, which is the full spectrum of PAD, including intermittent claudication and CLI, and above the knee and below the knee disease. Again, the quality of the studies are phenomenal. Independent Clinical Events Committee, duplex core lab evaluation, and follow-up up to 3 years. And you can see this is going to be one of the largest data points that are available. So in conclusion, I think the Stellarex program and the DCB shows incredible safety and efficacy demonstrated in greater than 1,000 patients across four trials with really excellent scientific rigor and independent imaging and clinical events adjudication. Again, we've studied a diverse patient profile, not only in this particular series, but in all the DCBs for us to apply to our practice. And I think Stellarex DCB has compelling level 1 evidence and favorable safety and efficacy outcomes. I thank you for your attention.